Court is not in session right now. They are currently weighing two emergency requests from the Trump administration.
Now, these cases involve the firing of an FTC commissioner and the freezing of foreign aid funding. Joining us now to talk more about these cases is the Hill's legal guru, Zach Schonfeld. Zach, thanks for joining us on a Monday. Let's start with this FTC commissioner case. We're talking about a woman named Rebecca Slaughter. Why did the lower court rule against the Trump administration in their decision to fire this woman?
Well, this firing at the FTC is one of a handful of independent agencies in which the president has attempted to fire these leaders without purporting to have any valid cause. The FTC, like some of these other agencies, federal law says that the president cannot remove these commissioners without having some sort of valid cause. Now, even though the president here does not purport to have that cause, instead, his administration is fighting in court, believing that these removal protections are unconstitutional. And now the big question in this FTC case becomes, will the Supreme Court issue a similar decision to what they have done when these other agency cases have made its way up to the Supreme Court? Take, for example, the NLRB. Trump did a similar thing there. The lower courts had blocked it. It got to the Supreme Court, and in an emergency decision, the justices allowed it to move forward. But the reason that this FTC case is potentially different is because in 1935, there was a Supreme Court decision that effectively greenlit all of these removal protections. And the very agency at issue in that 1935 decision was the FTC. So the lower court said, they looked at that NLRB ruling from the Supreme Court a few months ago, but said they've still got this 90-year-old precedent on the books. So until the Supreme Court overturns it, the lower court said this firing needs to be blocked.
All right, and Slaughter was back for a little time because they had temporarily allowed for her firing. And she said during her brief reinstatement, "In the week I was back at the FTC, it became even more clear to me that we desperately need the transparency and accountability Congress intended to have at a bipartisan independent agency." So Zach, talk about that a minute, because a lot of these agencies have been under fire.
That's right. And this is really part of a broad assertion of executive power by the Trump administration. That's the goal here in completing all of these firings without having cause. And their goal is to get these removal protections struck down. That would remove what has been a historical layer of insulation at these agencies, in which these agency leaders have historically been allowed to operate, knowing that they couldn't be fired at the political whims of whoever is in the White House. But the president is now trying to combat that under a legal theory, saying that these agencies are part of the executive branch, and so they say that it violates the separation of powers to have these removal protections in law, and the president here saying that he should be able to fire these leaders at will. So at its core, these legal cases are really a fight as to the future of whether these agencies should have independence, and also whether the Constitution permits them to have that independence.
Let's talk about this other case that the Supreme Court is hearing on an emergency basis, and this has to do with Trump, the administration blocking billions of dollars in foreign aid. Where do things stand with that?
Yeah, the clock is really ticking on this one because the lower court's order was designed, it told the Trump administration that the remainder of appropriated foreign aid that Congress had appropriated for this fiscal year, that they needed to go ahead and spend that. So we're talking about several $1 billion worth of foreign aid. But of course, the clock is ticking. Here we are in September. We're just a few weeks away from the end of the fiscal year here in the government. And so we are watching here for a potential Supreme Court ruling pretty quickly, given the fact that this case all has to do with, does the administration need to spend this money before September 30th? As of now, Chief Justice John Roberts has temporarily put that lower court order on hold until the Supreme Court decides this case, but it seems like there's a very strong chance that we could get a ruling this week.
And there's another rescissions bill to remove USAID funding.
That's right. And the very funding that we are talking about is actually a part of that pocket rescissions package. And if you look through the Trump administration's court filings, they talk about this package into the Supreme Court. So this is one of the things that the Supreme Court and the justices are going to have to grapple with as they're mulling this emergency application here right now.
Zach, we got about 20 seconds left. Lisa Cook, we got some more information on these fraud allegations coming from the White House. What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. And it's now been cited in court filings as we await a ruling from the federal appeals court here in Washington, D.C. as to whether her firing can move forward. We're watching for a ruling potentially today because, of course, the Fed meeting is later this week with that crucial vote on interest rate cuts. So the Trump administration has asked for fast action here.
All right.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it.
As always, you can go to thehill.com to read more of Zach's reporting, and the gavel drops on Wednesday morning.